Hello, Japan. Konnichiwa. I'm glad to be presenting here for you in this online conference from JSTQB. And I'm going to talk about dragons and software testing. So let me start by sharing my screen. There we go. So now you'll be able to see my screen. So my title today is Encouraging Children into Testing. This is a story about my book, Dragons Out, and why do we need to teach children about testing. Let's take a closer look. First, briefly, my background. So I am working at a company called Knowit in Nordic countries. It's a quite large company, and I'm training for that company and consulting software testing and other matters. I'm also the secretary of JSTQB, the largest organization of testing in the world. And now I'm an author at my own company, Dragons Out OU. So let's move forward. So my background from Knowit, this is a big company in all Nordic countries. I'm based in Helsinki in Finland. As for my background on JSTQB, that is a global association located in Brussels. So I'm currently the secretary. But what are we going to talk about today? So the agenda is first a little bit about how children learn. Then we talk about the book project. How did I end up with writing this book and publishing it? And then we go into the comparisons of testing and the fantasy world. And I'll explain a little bit how you or anybody, any children as well, can learn about software testing through fantasy. And in the end, I will give you an exercise, which is also a competition. So if you draw your own dragon and send a photo to me, I will enter you into a draw, and the lucky winner will win one of my books. Let's start. So, how children learn? Now, it's of course through multiple methods. As we all know, we all have been children at some stage. Some of us are parents, and some are even teachers. So there are many ways to learn. Stories and examples are very good ways to learn. They also include often a chance to identify with somebody, a hero, for example, and yeah, that also then extends into the imitating a third bullet there. So children like to work in the same way as the hero of the story. Then a little bit different ones are rhymes and songs. So some people learn through rhyming, some people learn through playing, and children especially like playing. We all know that. Games are a big thing, role play as well. Then there's exploring, just trying something and seeing how it works or how it doesn't work. That's how we all learn. Actually, I think that's how testers in general learn quite a bit, through trial and error. And then, of course, if we try to think about something in the most simple terms as possible, we learn by crystallizing in knowledge. Children are good in this as well. And repetition is always very good. And sometimes just remembering things. Some schools are more into the remembering stuff, some are more into the exploring stuff. And then finally, all parents would know that setting boundaries is very essential for learning. So you must have a safe environment to learn and try. It relates to the trial and error part. So there are multiple ways to do concerning book. This might not be all of those learning methods, but many of them. And looking into the theory of learning, many learning strategies is a good thing that enables people to learn in multiple ways. There's some research there with links to research saying that children actually and teenagers, they learn by observing, listening, experimenting, asking questions. And the more ways of learning you use simultaneously, the more chances there are that children will learn better into problem solving and so on. So it makes sense to combine different learning methods. Concerning storytelling, which is of course what a book is usually all about, especially a fantasy book, storytelling is really great for any kind of learner. Even a visual learner learns through the pictures they can see in a book or the mental pictures they can create and they imagine, and this is how some piece in a story might look like. If somebody is an auditory learner, they hear the words of the storyteller, even said aloud or again imagined. This is how a storyteller would say. Auditory learners can also learn from storytelling. And then even kinesthetic learners who are about feeling and touching, they also can learn, and they are doing it through hooking into the emotional connections and feelings from the story. So actually it's quite many types of learners that the storytelling supports. So storytelling is really the way to go. And then a good question is, how does testing work? Is it a difficult matter or an easy matter to learn? And I think it's quite abstract in the end. Quality, what is good? It's all proportional. Sometimes good is good and bad is bad. Sometimes it's the other way around. It depends on the context. So it's a little bit abstract. So I think it's very essential that we understand at what age children start learning about abstract concepts. And according to the research, it seems it is around age of 11 or 12 when children are mature enough to start thinking about more abstract matters. Of course, everybody's an individual. For some children, this is way earlier, and for some other children, it's a lot later. But it's a good average. So this is also why, concerning my book about testing, I've declared the main focus group to be children of age of 11 or 12. But again, anybody can read it, and children and adults alike have said they like it a lot. Anyway, concerning the skills, it makes sense to start from this age. And testing is really about these abstract concepts, using that knowledge into understanding the world and solve perfectly at testing. All right, so that was a little bit of background on how children learn and why it makes sense to understand that when considering a book to teach testing to children. But let's talk about a little bit more detail about the book project. How did I end up here? A big milestone is a workshop of James Whittaker, which I had a chance to participate some years ago, and it was a storytelling workshop. And James Whittaker is telling great stories himself and teaching people to be storytellers. And I really got a spark there, and I want to tell a story as well. Here's what he says in his storytelling manifesto about storytelling. I will read it aloud. Every person has a story. Every cause needs a storyteller. Learn to be a storyteller, because unless you are a candidate for a reality show, no one else is going to tell your story for you. So tell us a story. Tell us a good story. And let that good story be one part of the symphony of stories that makes this world a better place. So I really want to tell a story, and my story is about testing and dragons. But why in general do we need testing for children? Of course, many people have asked me this question, and here I explain the motivation a little bit. Our societies are talking increasingly about the need for children to learn to code, learn the coding skills, because lots of people are now saying, like, in order to survive in future society, you need to be able to code, you need to be able to use software. And of course, we all know that not everybody will be a coder, but you do need to learn how to use software. That's very true. Still, always talk about coding seems to be talking about coding or not testing. And anybody who is a tester knows that if you need to code something, you also need to test it. Now, the coding education has increased a lot. There are a number of books. There are coding schools, there are coding classes, coding clubs in different schools. It can be a hobby as well. But way too often the coding books in schools talk about testing just a little bit. And still the truth is that we have a similar need for testing. If you look at the people who are recruited into the IT industry to do coding, they also need to do testing. And there are also people who need to be full-time testers. It is a profession. So if our societies teach coding to children, we actually need to teach testing to children as well. And of course, you can do it through many ways. And my approach has been to write a book. And I think that is one of the best approaches. Let's take a look at the timeline of how a book project works. So the idea, I think, started back in 2014. So that's now 6 or even 7 years ago. Then Linda Liukas, a Finnish author, released a book, Hello Ruby. Hello Ruby is a coding book for children of kindergarten age, so around 6 or 7. And that fact of this publishing a book and lots of news about it brought immediately into my mind the fact that, or the idea that we need to teach also testing to children. We need to write a book about testing. Somebody needs to write the book. And then gradually I started thinking, actually, it probably needs to be me. I want to write a book for children about testing. A few years went by. I was trying to figure out when to find time to author this book. And then 2018, my family, we decided to organize a year out of work to take a sabbatical year. We moved to Lapland in northern Finland to spend time there, enjoy nature, enjoy family time. And also that enabled some small projects to my wife and me. To me, it was obviously author time. So I was able to write a book, and I did author the Finnish version of the Dragon's Out book during that year. By mid-2019, it was ready. The first draft was ready, and I was able to circulate it with lots of my friends and their children and different connections from testing industry and teachers. And so I went for a pilot feedback, and I got great feedback and good ideas how to make it even better. Then in the summer of 2019, I was looking for an illustrator. I found Adrizel and made a contact with her, and she created excellent, really great pictures in a fantasy style of dragons and knights and children and villagers and all of that. Really, really great pictures. I was so happy she was able to capture my thinking, my vision I had for the book, how the characters would look like. Then a little bit later, in 2019, I ran a crowdfunding campaign, basically to fund the illustration. It was quite a nice campaign. So illustration was there after that. And then I started immediately into translating it. So around the Christmas of 2019 and a little bit on 2020, I translated the Dragon's Out book into English. A bit of a project there as well. And then that time I also started contacting the publishers, both English publishers in UK and Finnish publishers in Finland. And I found, after lots of searching, and it's a long process to find a publisher in general, I found many choices and made contracts with one Finnish publisher, Alpine, and one English publisher, Austin Macaulay. And so after that, it was publishing work, lots of proofreading and reviewing layout and things like that. First for Finnish book in 2020, and then the book was published on December 1st, 2020. Around that time, I also ran a school donation campaign. So I contacted many Finnish IT companies to donate, to buy some books for themselves, but also to donate books to schools. And when I contacted schools and asked who would be interested in receiving donations, and I was able to do lots of matchmaking and got very good success. Over 20 IT companies in Finland and around 60 schools would receive books, Dragon's Out books, and they've been delivered by now. And then in around that time, I also started doing more publishing work with the English publisher, and currently the proofreading is almost done. There are many rounds of that, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the publishing date will be declared by my English publisher. It's been a long project. It's still ongoing. The English version is not yet out. I hope it to be very soon. There has been ups and downs. It's not been easy always. It's taken more time than I thought. It's taken time in general, and at the same time I've been first in sabbatical, but then working full time, and a bit of stressful moments, ups and downs in feelings as well. But I would still start again any moment. I would do it again. I would also recommend anybody who wants to write a book, just start the project. It's worth it. Okay, so I'm the author. I'm an illustrator, Adrian Sell, that's there. And I'll set up a company. So over right side in the company, Dragon's.org. I'm also releasing a presentation related to this book, and it can be used independently. It's Creative Commons licensed, and anybody can use it in that way. It's on my website already in Finnish, quite soon in English as well. Okay, let's move on. So how does it work? How does learning to test through fantasy work? So it's all about the power of a story. So through a very nice story, very attractive story, but you just can't stop reading, a fantasy story. You go through different scenarios, different things. People meet dragons. The dragons are harassing villages. They need to kill the dragons or at least vanquish them somewhere. So anytime there's a piece of story, then I also explain how the story works in software testing in the IT world, and it's really about coding as well. It's about the software development project as well. It's not just testing work. So I will always explain what does this story mean in IT world, and so through the power of analogy, people understand in an easier way. Oh, there's a dragon. Oh, that's a defect. We need to kill the dragon. Okay, we need to fix the defect. So the power of the story is quite strong. Let me give you some examples of of these comparisons. So dragons. There are many different types of dragons in the book. They represent different types of defects. This one here, annoying dragon, that's what I call it. It's red, it's medium-sized, it's difficult to find, but once you find it, it's fairly easy to get rid of. It doesn't fly, but it has small wings. It breathes fire. And what it likes to do, eat lambs. So you see lots of characteristics in dragon, and similarly, it represents a memory leak defect, and similarly, the severity is medium. And symptoms are that the computer gets slower and it can't function at all. Cause of the defect is memory not being released after use. A root cause is not being careful in freeing up the memory. And how you test it is you measure and measure the memory being used. And how you fix it, you find the line that causes the problem, and then you correct it. So comparisons are very powerful, and you can go into detail to really understand how things work. In the book, there are many other types of dragons. Most of them are actually functional types. So some are big, some are small, some are easy to find, some are hard to find, some are easy to get rid of, some are hard to get rid of. So in the same fashion as bugs can be big or small, hard to find, easy to find, and so on. The worst one even has two heads, so it's very, very powerful, very, very bad defect. So pretty cool dragons there. And these are functional defects that can be very bad and or easy. As we know, different bugs have different severities and visibility, and you need to fix them. I also go into non-functional types of defects. This one is a mean black dragon, hard to find, likes to steal food and treasure without being detected. You might guess what it is. It is a security defect. So one of the non-functional types of defects. So you need to find it as well. Of course, fixing it's a little bit different than fixing a functional bug, but again, you fix a vulnerability in a software so that it doesn't exist anymore, and then it's fixed. So it also works quite nicely. I also explain that there are different types of dragons that maybe doesn't concern with the software that much. So here we talk about underground dragon that likes to dig tunnels and go to cellars to find easy food. Underground dragons represent hardware defects. So even though a tester might think the problem is first in the software, with more investigation, it becomes apparent that the hardware is faulty. Something has broken down, and then you replace it with the working part, and then it works again. People ask me, are all the dragons bad? My son, for example, who likes dragons in general, first said that, I don't like it that much. Dragons are all bad. I like dragons. And when I was able to say to my joy that actually I already thought of a nice dragon in this story. So there can be nice dragons as well, which are quite easy and don't really bother people. They do help people sometimes. So what these would be in software testing world, they would be defect seeding and defects. So defects that developer or a tester has put into the software on purpose. It's not the most used technique, but it's quite a powerful technique once you learn how to use it. So the idea is that you put in, let's say, 100 defects into the software, all around the software, and then the theory is that once you have found all these seeded defects, then you have found all the real defects as well. So it's a way of measuring test coverage when it's otherwise a little bit hard to measure. Quite a nice way to make your testing more powerful. Okay, so different dragons and different defects give lots of knowledge for people. What else do we have? Well, in fantasy stories, we of course have knights. Knights are usually killing dragons in stories, right? Also in this story. What knights represent in the software testing world is developers and testers. As in agile teams in general, they are not necessarily different people. They could be different aspects of a person, different roles, different skills, but also quite often different people. So knights are people who build the software and test the software. They find and fix defects. So now obviously in the story, because there are lots of dragons, there needs to be lots of knights as well who get rid of the dragons. But as we know, it's not only the development team who tests. Anybody can test. Users are a very good source for testing, especially if you think about beta testing or if you think about acceptance testing. Your users, your user base are also testing, and then they can give additional great ideas about what could be better and also find real defects, sometimes even really bad defects, even though the testing team or the development team has tried its best. In a story, children and villagers represent these users. So they help build the software and test the software. And in the story, they help the knights to find dragons and get rid of the dragons. There are a special type of villagers in the story, which are hunters. Now, hunters are sometimes able to kill the dragons themselves. You know, they have a bow, they have spears. They actually are able to find and destroy a dragon sometimes, not always. So it's a very good analogy to, again, the real world of software, where the maintenance personnel, IT support, takes care of the system and actually fixes some of the defects, some of the problems that the software in production might encounter. Sometimes in the world of DevOps, these people are actually within the software development teams. So the teams themselves also are in charge of maintaining and keeping the system running and keeping the users happy. Whichever way, they are operational skills. So the hunters represent operational skills in the story. And then there are lords and ladies. So somebody in IT world, somebody always orders the software, somebody pays the bill. Who pays the salaries of developers and testers? Who wants the software for their business? In comparison to the fantasy story, this is the lords and ladies of the villages and the castles. And so in the story, they hire or maintain a group of knights who are taking care of the defense of the castles and of villages, and obviously then the knights will find and destroy the dragons. But it is the lords and ladies who actually commission this army of knights. And so we need lords and ladies. They do part of the testing as well through making it possible. And in the world of software, obviously, this role can be higher or closer to the team in higher levels, like a boss or a management, or it can be close to the team, like a product owner who spends most of their time with the team. Trying to help the team to understand from business perspective what needs to be done and finding defects in that way as well. And then finally, we have a role which is experts in the IT world. expert in whatever, but it could be on functional things like usability, security, or performance. These are the typical ones where you have a specialized knowledge so that somebody actually specializes in, for example, usability and usability testing as an extension of that. In the fantasy story, this is a wise man, a sage, a wizard. And these sages, they are very knowledgeable. They know about dragons. They know about ways to vanquish and defeat dragons. And obviously they then help knights and villagers to find and destroy the dragons. So very much needed role for especially for special types of defects and special types of dragons. Okay, so that was some ideas, some insight into how fantasy story works as a way to make it concrete and maybe more understandable, at least, and especially make it fun to learn about software testing. So the book is full about those, and now I give you a chance to try a little bit also to make these comparisons between the IT world and the fantasy world. So we go into an exercise. Design your own dragon. So what happens here is that you get some paper and a pencil. It doesn't matter which color, just a piece of paper. And you start by thinking about the defect that you have encountered. Something strange. It's probably going to be more interesting. Not your trivial task, but maybe the most interesting defect that you have found. A very big defect. Think about that. Name it, write it on a paper, and try to describe that defect with a few words. You know, a big defect, a really funny defect, something like that. Then think of an equivalent dragon. So if a defect was a dragon, what kind of defect it would be? If a dragon was big, probably the defect is also big. If a dragon was funny, so if the defect was funny, maybe the dragon is also a little bit laughable in some way. Maybe it has very big eyes and whatever. So think of a dragon and then draw this dragon. And while drawing, of course, it's nice if you can draw a great picture, but that's not the point. The main point is to carry through this idea of describing a defect through the dragon. And this is lots of fun, drawing a dragon and making these comparisons in your mind and then transferring them into the paper. So take some time. Usually 5 to 10 minutes is enough for this exercise. I've run it with many different types of groups. So don't spend too much time. Just transfer your idea of a dragon into the paper. And then if you like, you can email it to me to kari.kakkonen@dragonsart.com. Email is there. And I'll take a few days after the conference, and then I'll make a draw. So one of the photos of the dragon will win a free copy of my English Dragon's Art book, which I'll deliver, of course, after it's published, so sometime this year. So I look forward very much to receiving your interesting dragon pictures. Enjoy drawing, and I'm sure I will enjoy seeing your results when you send photos to me. Okay, that's it. Thanks very much for your time, and I'm very glad I was able to tell you a little bit about dragons and testing. If you are interested in a book in this website, you can pre-order it already in English. I will send books after the release date. You can follow my book project. There's a blog post posting service where you can subscribe to my blogs on dragonsart.com, and obviously you can ask questions from me via email about anything. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you. Sayonara.